Hey guys, we're back again with another airliner kit. This time we're going to be looking at Revell's 767-300ER in British Airways markings and 1/144th scale. Let's open her up and take a look. Now, this is a fairly large airliner kit, given by the size of the box. And for scale, set these aside for now, and we'll take a look at those in a minute. So, starting out with the fuselage, we have a combination of primarily recessed details with a few raised details, namely this door here. Other than that, everything else is recessed. Don't ask me why Revell chose to do this. This is odd to say the least. But other than this, casting is good. No real issues I can find. There are some sink marks inside here, but they're not going to be visible. Much the same on this other fuselage half. Now, one important detail. The aerial configuration. Now, initially, as this kit was originally produced in the early 90s, I was concerned that these would be incorrect. However, after doing some digging and finding some photos of the actual aircraft in this particular marking, the aerial placement is correct. So you won't need to do any type of modification or anything like that if you want to build it in this configuration as the decals provide. Moving on, next we've got our wings. To be fair, I don't know why, just to my eye, they seem small for the aircraft type. I'm sure they're correct, but just to my eye, visually, they look small. Surface detail is much the same. Hopefully this will show up on camera. No real complaints. We do have some fairly decently detailed main gear bays, despite the scale, which will definitely look nice if you give them a little bit of a wash. Same with the undersides. All the detail is nicely recessed. Should build up quite nicely. There is a little bit of flex though here in the portion where the engine nacelles mount. You may have to do a little bit of heating to flex the plastic to the correct shape, and or a lot of clamping down when you glue two together. Speaking of the nacelles themselves, they're acceptable. As we've seen on some of the other airliner kits, the compressor fan section is arguably the weakest in terms of detail, but it's acceptable. I mean, it's not terrible. It'll do the trick. My only question here, and I only admit I did not dig too deeply into looking at the aft section on the 6.7, is its representation of the exhaust. It should hopefully be correct. I will make a note to double check, add to the comments, but it does provide a little bit more detail and interest in that aft section. Moving on, we've got our horizontal tailplanes, as well as our nose gear and all of our landing gear. Landing gear themselves are acceptably detailed for the scale. I mean, eventually there comes a point where, there's only so much detail you can do when we're talking these smaller scales and it actually be visible. My one complaint is with the nose gear, how they did the build of that, which is all but going to require you to attach the nose gear before you close it up. We'll see more of that in a second when we look at the instructions. And then lastly, we have our windscreen. Nothing really to say here. It's pretty basic and standard. So give me a second to get the parts back into the box and we'll move on to the decals. Alright, now this is one area where I do feel that Revell has done a tremendous job is with these decals. They're very bright, very sharp. I would argue they're some of the nicest I've seen, especially given the colorful nature of the tail emblem. This is something that's almost absolutely critical to get right, and they've done it. We're also giving all of our windows as decals as well as separate frames, which is a nice inclusion, depending on how you want to do it. Personally, I'd recommend going with these, as trying to do actual windows for the length of the fuselage is going to be an absolute nightmare. Beyond that, we've got all of our stencils, nicely rendered. Now, surprisingly, they included 3 decals for the spinners. I could understand if I'm doing it for a tri-jet. Can't understand why they did it for a twin. All I can figure is they provide in case you screw up, you've got one spare. So, that was decals there. Now, moving on to instructions. Do you like that they include a full breakdown of the part trees, so you at least can confirm you do have everything? And interestingly enough, they include a second engine nacelle sprue, albeit marked out. Something which I can't understand, given that we don't even have that sprue in the box, so why include it in the manual? To me, I suspect this was to allow for additional versions, and they just didn't feel like changing the instructions. So as I mentioned, we start with the nose gear, and as you can see here, in order to assemble it, you're going to have to glue in that nose gear component. Which, personally, I don't like. Trying to paint and maneuver with that sticking out is just asking for it to get snapped in half. So I will say you're going to need to exercise some care or figure out some way to get that nose gear strut in without damaging the paintwork. Or alternatively, do it as a wheels up configuration. Ultimately, that's going to be your decision. From there, we finish up. We do get instructions for how to do it if you want to do it in the wheels up configuration, which is a nice inclusion with them telling you where you need to cut the gear doors off. From there, we close up the fuselage, and then add the windscreen, as well as do our additional gear doors, and then our wings, get those on, get the main gear, get those all done. Now, an interesting goof, they show this as for wheels up configuration, despite it being adding the wheels to the landing gear. I just found that to be a little humorous. From there, we also get our wheels up with the gear doors closed, then onto our engine nacelles, getting those on, and then our very nicely done paint key. Very smart that they've shown you the full configuration, all different sides of everything. That will definitely make getting everything painted and decaled correctly a lot easier. So Revell did overall, I would say, a decent job on the instructions. So, what do I think? Well, I do like the fact that it is an interesting rendition of the 6.7. I do like that they giving you all the information you need to build it correctly. I just wish they had made getting that nose gear on a little easier. It's just a personal pet peeve. But overall, no, it's not a bad kit. It's a solid kit. I would even say it's a good first airliner kit. There's no real sort of gotcha areas that are going to be like you're spending days, if not weeks, trying to figure out a solution to getting it together or getting it together without damaging other components. No, it's just a solid all-around kit. So that was a look at Revell's 1/144 scale 767-300ER in British Airways markings. Solid little kit that I do highly recommend. So until next time.